Can you use the principles of law of attraction to get pregnant? Absolutely yes, and absolutely no. Bear with me, I'm going to explain exactly what I mean so that you can use techniques and strategies in a way that expands you and supports you and doesn't make you feel freaked out and panicked that you're going to get it wrong and do the wrong thing and attract the wrong thing. Hi, I'm Lucy. I work at Catching Rainbows Fertility. I'm a registered nurse and fertility therapist. My job really is working with women to combine everything medical, clinical with everything spiritual and alternative to figure out how you can get pregnant when you're finding it to be a struggle. So first off the back, before we get into this, I'm just going to say that over 15 years of working with hundreds of women, having watched them get pregnant, and also at the same time knowing that not one single one of them was completely, perfectly lined up and devoid of any negative feelings around getting pregnant. Not one of them was in this completely zen, I completely believe it to be true place, which is what some of the law of attraction campaigners would have you believe is necessary. So what were they doing? How did they do it? And how can you learn from their experiences and apply it to your own life? That's what we're going to get into. So first of all, I'm going to describe what I will call the mainstream version of law of attraction. Now, this is what you'll see people talking about a lot on social media and putting their own spin on something that's really come from The Secret. And it's very basic and it's quite scary. It's that thing of you must control your experience by thinking only thoughts that line you up with the things that you want. And if you ask for it and if you intend it and if you say it and live it as if you already have it, then these things will just come into your life. The problem with it is that in itself implies that you're not allowed to ever think anything bad and you're never allowed to have a negative emotion or do anything that's going to throw you off course. And if anything happens to you that you don't like or you didn't want, then it's all your fault because you didn't line yourself up with it and you must have thought some negative thoughts. That's absolutely not how this works. And that's what I'm going to explain to you. So like attracts like, and this makes sense. I'll give you a really superficial example. So if you are heading out the door and you feel worried that you're going to be late, you don't want to be late and you hate being late and it's really important that you get there on time, you very quickly create a scenario where there's absolutely no resistance in your body to the notion of being late, the feeling experience of being late. You can already feel it in your body what it's going to be like if you are late, and you start to have thoughts that create a feeling. And the feeling is very real. It's very, very much like you're already there, you know? So when we have thoughts, they create feelings. The feelings are creating a chemistry in the body, which ultimately gives us a setting, a vibration, if you will. Now that vibration feels a certain way, and we all know how it is to not want to be late. And you start to say to yourself, oh my God, I'm going to be late, I'm going to be late, I'm going to be late. And not only are you saying the words, but you're absolutely feeling exactly those words. They match up perfectly. It's not like you're saying something that you don't quite line up with. So therefore you are completely open and resistant free to the concept of lateness. And it doesn't matter whether you want to be late or not, or whether you want to be on time. The vibrational place that you're at is, I'm going to be late. And those are the days where you lose your keys or your car doesn't start or there's roadworks. Something happens to enable you to be late. And in that sense, law of attraction, it is lining you up with exactly what you thought it would line you up with, what you believe to be true. And that's where it gets a little sticky, because when you're doing big things like trying to get pregnant, it's so emotive and it's so scary and you want it so much. And you're in this really big experience whereby you're hitting all the marks for vulnerability and you are frightened. You are out of control. You are in uncertainty. You're often in trauma. You're in grief. You're in all these things. It wouldn't be possible for you to be in all these things and not have any of those negative emotions. Okay, so that's why it isn't about getting rid of them. The mainstream people would say to you, you have to say something that intends something different to what you actually feel and what you're actually experiencing. So it will tell you, use affirmations, talk about things like, I am fertile and I know that my pregnancy is coming. And that's fine if you feel it, if you line up with the sensation of that and it feels like the truth in your body. But if it doesn't, what you do is you create a little bit more doubt and a little bit more fear. And really you're saying something, but you're feeling something else. And it's what you're feeling that is your vibration. And that is what the law of attraction is going to respond to. Now, don't worry. You don't have to get rid of all your negative feelings. That's the point. The point I'm making here is you are allowed to have all those complex feelings. Your main vibrational core is, I would love to have a baby. I love the idea of bringing pregnancy into my experience. I love the idea that I could get there. And that feels like a purpose for me. That feels like a calling. I feel pulled towards it. And at the same time, I'm experiencing big things that are breaking me open. They're breaking me through. They're pulling me apart into pieces. And I have doubt and I have fear and I am in uncertainty and I am grieving and I am terrified. It's okay. It's okay to have those thoughts and it's okay to have those feelings. The problem we have and the resistance we create with our energy is when we deny those feelings, we try to push them away, we get scared of being scared. We'll talk about that more in a minute. The point that I'm making there is you can have an underlying vibration of I'm pointing in the direction of following my calling. I'm pointing in the direction of being true to myself in terms of I've identified the thing that I want more than anything in the world that's calling me on a soul level. This is not an ego shopping list of stuff that you want. This is much bigger than that. And I'm allowing myself the vulnerability of following the path that looks like it could lead there. And so that's me being authentic. That's me being genuine. That's me listening to my inner self. And at the same time, my human self alongside that is experiencing the resistance that is all par for the course. Resistance is part of our development. So we're going to get doubt and fear and panic and anxiety and all those things. And if we can learn how to bring them along for the ride, not push them away, not be frightened of them, but say, well, of course I'm going to feel those things. This is really important to me. Of course I'm going to feel those things. That's the resistance. That's part of the growing process. These are growing pains. And if I'm feeling scared, that means I'm going the right way. And just because I'm scared doesn't mean any of that's true. Any of the thoughts around being frightened don't necessarily mean they're a prophecy. So you can have all of those going on. And at the same time, your vibration is, I know that I'm following my calling and speaking my truth. So yeah, the mainstream would say it's all about figuring out what you want, knowing you can have it, and just allowing yourself to have it. And so, essentially we all become a group of completely entitled morons who just sit around deciding what we want, asking for it, it gets delivered, it's all fine. The law of attraction is not about having an ego-led list of stuff that if I get the stuff, then I will create the feeling that I want. So I want this house to make me feel happy. I want this job to make me feel fulfilled. I want, this car to make me feel successful. It's not about that, because that means you need the thing to get to the feeling place that you're trying to get to, and everything that you want is outside of you. Whereas actually we are very capable of conjuring up any emotional experience that we want to, even in our imagination. And that's another layer of the law of attraction that we can use in different ways, because I think when you're trying to imagine yourself to be well, if you're trying to imagine yourself to be feeling at ease, or if you're imagining yourself to be better off financially, I think you can use your imagination for that and create that vibration. Absolutely. When it comes to pregnancy, I think it's slightly different. I think it's a very unique experience in terms of navigating the vibrational reality of what we're feeling because of how much we want something and how much it isn't on our shopping list. It's a calling. This is not a superficial, and I'm not against material things by any means, bring it on. It's more, I'm open to these experiences and these end outcome emotions, and I feel like that's the direction for me to go in order for me to get more of it. And what we have to remember is there's so much in the gap between where we are and where we want to get. And the law of attraction often will line us up with opportunities to create experiences during that gap that open us up, that bring about healing, that bring about learning, growth. And I've got to be honest with you, my friends, the gap can suck. It can tear you apart. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have been crying on the bathroom floor or staring out of the window, lost, just thinking, oh my goodness, this is so big or so overwhelming, or I can't believe this has happened, or this doesn't make any sense. Why has it gone this way? Why has it gone that way? When I was so focused on this and I really thought this was going to be the way and it really felt like it was lining up. That's where we trip ourselves up. That's where we bring about so much suffering to ourselves because we assume that our ego story, our human self story of the best version of how it can come about is all we know, and it's all we go for. You know, it's got to line up. It feels like it's a sign. It feels like this is coming together. Just leave room for the fact that the universe knows you better than you know yourself. Often there are plot twists which turn out to have these nuggets of gold in them. And yes, there's pain and suffering. And yet, if we're open to it, we can learn all sorts of things, and it can take us on a path that means, yes, okay, it's a bit of a diversion, it's a bit of a long way round, but wow, haven't you learned about yourself and how to navigate certain things? And maybe you've healed things about yourself that you didn't realize was all par for the course in you becoming the parent that you want to be. It's not just about getting pregnant. It's about the molding and shaping of you in preparation for the life that you want to have with this child, with these children, with this family. Be ready for that. Be ready for the plot twists. And be aware that although sometimes they're pretty savage, it's not because you've messed up. It's not because you haven't done your affirmations. It's not because you've steered yourself off track. So often, it's an attempt from this higher part of you to steer you in the direction of all this other fruit. I'm going to give you a couple of examples to try to illustrate this point, okay? So, my belief system is that we have our human self, our human form, our ego self, which of course we need, and is very useful, very factual, and it can tell us all sorts of things and sort of keep us safe to a certain extent, superficially, you know, there's a dark alley, don't go down it, that sort of thing. And then we've got the spiritual aspect of us, the energy that we are, that is connected to a higher power, a higher force, that we are it, and we're all part of this collective consciousness that is all about growth and experience. And that higher self, whether you call it God, the divine, the universe, whatever it isn't separate. It isn't a force that's deciding whether or not you've done enough to warrant deserving X, Y, and Z. It's you. It's you deciding, am I going to let myself have this? Am I going to open myself up for that? Am I going to put myself into a position whereby I allow the best outcomes for myself and I don't attach too much to the absolute specific conditions, and I trust that actually there's a spirit part of me that communicates with me through my instinct, through my feelings, through my intentions and my intuitions, that steers me in a direction that lines me up with the sorts of things that are most important to me. And these are our end outcome emotions. Our end outcome emotions are, what did you come here to really experience? So is it a sense of true belonging, unconditional love, fulfillment, purpose, satisfaction, love, happiness, fun, joy? And then it goes a layer deeper, because to be able to have all of those things, we also need to be equipped with the skills of knowing how to cope when we're suffering. How can we ease our suffering by not making it harder on ourselves with the stories we tell ourselves based on beliefs that we've accumulated along the way? Like, for example, I will often sit with a woman who's had a failed IVF cycle, and she's busy beating herself up. It's my fault. I should have done more. I didn't do enough. I didn't line myself up with it. The universe hates me. And oh my God, the suffering we have when we tell ourselves these stories. And sometimes I just have to say, let's even look at that factually. Factually, we know all the things were there. We know that your lining was perfect. We know that you were doing all the right things. We know you're healthy. We know you're receptive. We knew you were going to have to work your way through these frozen embryos. We didn't know which one it was going to be. And we don't know the consequence of the timing for when the right embryo implants in order to bring about the course of the rest of your life unfolding. It could well be that you're going to get pregnant with the next one, and that lines you up with your child being in the class with the exact right child that's going to be something really special and important for them. Maybe it's the exact right teacher at the right time, or you meet a mum who becomes a lifelong friend. There's lots of things that you may have intended for yourself that law of attraction is engineering on your behalf. And yet here you are suffering because you're telling yourself a story. And we all tell ourselves a story. I do it all the time. Of course we do. Yet how can we reduce our suffering by understanding a little bit more that we can hand over to this part of us that might well have a much better idea than us? So, for example, my higher self knows that I love to be inspired and I love to help people, and I have a real strong maternal power energy, and I've come here for the best versions of unconditional love, and I want wow moments in every day. And this is not about being toxically positive, by the way. I'm absolutely not positive all the time. It's about, how can I hold myself through the hard times, and how can I celebrate every little and big win in the best way possible and feel moved about things? Well, my ego self would have panned out one life for me. My ego self planned that I would meet somebody, get married, be a nurse, have 4 kids, earth mother, all of that. My higher self knew, well, if you want the top end, high level versions of love, belonging, unconditional love, joy, appreciation, then we're going to take you on another journey. So we're going to bring about infertility to line you up with, actually during the infertility process, addressing some of the things that have really been very healing, and to teach you things about the way that you think and the way that you feel and the way that you do things. We're even going to send you a child that is going to break you down into many parts, and you're going to rebuild to be able to have the experience that you actually want to have. But it's not going to look anything like your ego had planned for you. Just trust us. We've got this. You're going to get it. And yes, because everything has been so difficult, because I've had so much contrast, there are so many things in life now where I'm like, wow, that's great. I'm so excited about that. And you get this true joy from it. It's something about the methods that you learn, and everybody's different. But you might go through your fertility journey, and it might mean that you end up learning more about yourself than you ever would have done had you just got pregnant when you planned. And what do you think the children coming in today, the very special children, are looking for? I mean, can you imagine having parents who are emotionally intelligent and awake and conscious, and they know how to deal with their own stuff? If they can deal with their own stuff, they can teach their children. I mean, can you imagine a world where this is happening? And maybe That's why. That's what you've agreed to do. That's why you're here doing this journey, not because you're a martyr, but because you want the high-end stuff and you want to be the best parent that you can be. I've been through so many horrendously difficult things, and yet I wouldn't take any of them back now, because each one of them threw me in the black pit and left me there for days, weeks, months, years, and I had to fight my way out. But the process of doing that, I learned so many little nuggets along the way that I take with me, that have built me and helped me to get the most out of experiences and understand, again, how to use the law of attraction as well, to line myself up with the best possible outcomes, and knowing that probably my higher self has a much better idea of how it's going to pan out than I do. So I can practice letting go more, surrendering more, sharing the burden of the detail, and not fixating too much on the engineering and the manipulation of everything. So it's about understanding how you feel much more than how you think. So you can feel your way to finding your outcomes, and in the meantime, you can absolutely collect goodies along the way. There was one lady, I was going to give you some examples. So one lady, and in fact, this is quite a common story. This has happened a few times. She had this intention about this baby, and she'd been trying for years, and she's the most beautiful, warm, intelligent, emotionally intelligent, lovely, lovely person. Lovely marriage, just gorgeous, gorgeous people. And she held that intention, and yet at the same time she's going through all the difficulty and all the disappointment and all the overwhelm. She had loads of IVF, like nothing worked for years. When I met her, and I was trying to be a detective, trying to find out what's going on then, because everything else is in place and you're coming up for this next IVF transfer. And I was doing this Reiki, and so I had my hands just sort of going over her body, not touching her body, obviously, but just the energy around her. And when I ran my hands across her uterus, it was like it was switched off. It was totally dialed down, as if it was just in its own little world. And I felt like we need to switch this back on. Something's happened here. And I said to her, you don't have to explain details to me at all. I'm aware, I'm picking up that something has happened to you in this area. And she confessed and confided she'd been sexually abused as a child. And as we talked and as we opened up about it, she was saying, in order to cope with it, she'd had to shut everything down and switch off to it and dissociate. We did lots of talking around it, and we did this meditation, this hypnosis that really came out of nowhere. For me, it came from her higher self telling me the words to tell her so that she could bring about this healing. And she was empowering herself to take back control, to go back there to her body and put the light back in her womb and say, this is a safe place, I've got you, everything is okay, body, we can do this, I'm strong, I'm safe, I'm all these things. And this all came, and she shared that light with her husband. It was a beautiful, beautiful session. And so she had her transfer coming up, and of course we're thinking, this is great, everything's lined up, and even this amazing healing happened, and then it didn't work. And we were both devastated and disappointed, and come on, universe, why? What's going on? Why would you do this to us? And again, assuming that the universe is separate to us, which it isn't. The universe, God, divine, it's us. We are it. It isn't separate to us. It suits us sometimes to defer it to someone else. The responsibility is in God's hands. It's up to God whether this works out. It's a cop-out, actually. And I think it's a concept that religions use to control people through fear. But anyway, tangent. So she goes through this devastation, and we decide, there must be something that we don't know is going to happen. There must be something unfolding here that we don't yet understand. It feels so much like this baby should come. It feels so much like this should work out. I can't feel anything else than that is the scenario that's coming. And she felt the same. The next month, she got pregnant. naturally. Now, this isn't gold standard. It's not like, oh, it's so much better if you don't have to have IVF. As she said, for her symbolically, it felt like her body wanted to wait and do it itself, as if that represented her bringing her wholeness back and her strength and her stability. So for her, that was very symbolic. Now, had she, the law of attraction lined her up with these opportunities to bring about that healing, to bring about that wholeness, and yet going through a failed IVF cycle again was not pleasant. It's not fluffy and lovely, and all the lights go on and everything's great. Often it's pretty damn brutal, and that's where we hold on to, my higher self must know better. Something must be going on here. Something must be unfolding. How can I comfort myself through this difficult time? How can I calm myself when I'm frightened? So here's what you do. Okay, number one, you align with the truth that resonates for you. However that looks and feels, what's your faith? What's your story? Is your story like mine? Is it slightly different? You do you, because whatever you believe in is what's going to be your truth. That's how the law of attraction works. And if you have something that you can lean into, even if sometimes it bewilders you, perplexes you, you have a safe place to come back to. That's where I always come back to. Whenever something really challenging happens or things don't go the way I expect them to, I come back to that place of, okay, but I know I allow my higher self to have my back. I know my higher self understands my end outcome desires in terms of how that's going to make me feel. So I'm going to trust that she's got something else figured out here. Now, for me, because so many times this has happened to me, and so many times I've watched it happen with clients, I can see that it's true. And I know that it's going to be okay. So I get slightly less fearful as I go through life, because I have had more experience of it working out in the end and going, oh, wow, there was that cool thing that I learned from that. Or there was that brought about that horrible experience that I'd had as a younger person that meant that it brought it all up, so that I had an opportunity really to process it and shift it and change it and calm it down and put it to bed. So number two, understand that it's all about beliefs. Everything stems from our beliefs, and our beliefs are just thoughts that we keep on thinking. So our emotions come off the back of our beliefs, and we are triggered into thoughts and more thoughts and more thoughts that bring about a feeling and a chemistry in the body. And this contributes to the vibration that we're giving out. So we can start to gently adjust our beliefs by thinking new thoughts in order to expand the way that we're feeling. So for example, instead of giving yourself an affirmation that just puts you in complete restriction because you say the affirmation and you feel the doubt that you have around those words, like I'm fertile and healthy and my pregnancy is coming, and inside you're like, I'm terrified my pregnancy isn't coming, I don't know if I trust my fertility or myself. That's the vibration that you're going to give out. So instead, it's okay for me to be scared. I'm going after something that feels like my calling. I trust myself that I know what I'm feeling. I know what appeals to me, and I love the idea that I'm finding my way to my baby, and my baby is finding their way to me, and I am open to the universe steering and guiding me to wherever I need to be to bring about what I need to know. And trust that things will pop in that you haven't engineered. Things will pop in that you didn't manipulate to happen or ask for specifically to happen. Let the universe fill in the details and the gaps, and everything else will come together, because you will get a thought that gives you an inspiration to take an action. And it might be totally unrelated. So you might be inspired at some point to pick up a book and you read something and it just sparks something in your mind to do something else, and you have another idea and it lines you up with something else, and it's like a domino effect like that. I mean, this is how I've watched so many pregnancies come about. There's a little bit of surrender in having to manipulate the process, and there's a bit of just lean into how you're feeling and let your feelings guide you, you will get a sense of this way or that way. Does this way feel least wrong, or this way feel least wrong? And just keep following the feeling, because you can't always feel most right about fertility. So sometimes it's least wrong. So sometimes it's really intense, like I'm so terrified, I'm all over the place, I don't know if I can do this, and like, okay, you've got two choices here. You phone up that clinic and you cancel your embryo transfer this Friday, or you turn up and have that embryo this Friday. Which one of those feels least wrong? And you instantly know. You have that sense. So always follow the feelings and make room for everything else. If it doesn't feel comfortable, let it in. Let it in and talk to it. Of course, I'm going to be scared. I'm petrified. I don't like uncertainty. And yet I'm propelled to move forward towards this thing that's calling me. And I'm going to be brave and I'm going to be strong, even though all the time I'm going to be scared as well. And that's okay. I'm going to let myself be authentic in this. That's how you open up the doors to finding your way to this baby. So essentially, it's about self-love. How many experiences do we go through where we have an opportunity to activate our self-care and our self-love and our self-appreciation and understanding who we are? There are so many dots to join, and you don't have to join them all. It's not a case of you have to complete this program properly and then you can get to the place where you're trying to go. It isn't that. There are so many different routes for it to come together. It's just, it amazes me how much people break through the stuff that's been holding them back on the way to getting pregnant as a result of exploring their infertility. And it makes them better people. It makes them happier in themselves. And it works because then they're better parents and they have a better experience being a parent. So perhaps the take home from this is, maybe I'm not singled out to have a shit time. Maybe the universe hasn't, as a separate force, decided that you don't get to have that nice, straightforward life and have your dreams come true. Maybe you pitched to come here and have an enhanced, extraordinary experience, and that this isn't about you not being able to have a baby. This is about you going through this course that's going to open you up and allow you to have the best high-end versions of the emotions that you want to have and the experiences of those emotions. And that the whole point of this is for you to have that journey and to fall in love with some of the bits that you find along the way in the gap and get to have the baby. Maybe the baby is part of your focus, it's part of your bait, if you like, to focus you down to do the work that something in your soul knows that you want to do. So this isn't about, you've been picked out to do lots of suffering, and you're probably going to end up with a life that just makes you miserable. Do you really believe that? Because I don't. That's my philosophy. I just think I can't believe we're just here to pointlessly suffer. I believe there's learning to be had in every aspect of suffering, and that we get better and better at not suffering as much, and that we get better at understanding our feelings can guide us, and we can adjust our thoughts in order to shift our feelings, in order to align our vibration to whatever is going to be the best possible outcome, and being open to the fact that our higher self knows a version of that and knows a pathway to that and a route that's going to be better than anything you could possibly imagine. So I hope that makes sense. I think I'm going to make 1 million more videos on this subject because there's so much to it and it's fascinating. So if you have any experiences, comments, thoughts, ideas, I'd love to hear them. Put them in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe, and I will look forward to seeing you in some more videos.